Greetings again, beloved creators. We are the founders, continuing our discourse and offering insight on the Luciferian rebellion. Up until about 1/2 million years ago in your timeline, Earth continued to attract more and more souls from across the universe. The vibratory level of these souls was generally fourth density, meaning that they were subject to the astral and etheric distortions inherent within that level of vibration. The genetics were now a blend of many races, but the Orions gradually began to dominate. War between Rigel and Betelgeuse had made life rather intolerable for many Orions, and Earth was seen as a place to begin life anew. Unlike the Dracos, the Orions were able to easily land directly on the Earth, in addition to coming through the incarnational process, and so their numbers increased significantly faster than the Dracos, whose reptilian bodies had a hard time adjusting to Earth's atmosphere and gravity. We, the founders, observed with dismay what was going on, but because we were not allowed to interfere, we were like lab technicians watching a specimen multiply out of control and doing nothing to contain it. A group of archangels and ascended beings from 7th, 8th and 9th density were also watching the Earth. Several of these beings are well known to Earth people, including Archangel Michael. An ascended being that was later given the name Lucifer was among those watching the progress of Earth. Lucifer devised a plan to lessen the chaos on Earth by teaching Earth souls how to control their emotions and use their intellectual capabilities so they would not be as easily swayed by the negatively polarized factions. Lucifer mistakenly attributed the decaying situation on Earth to unbridled emotions and passion. A group of souls headed by Lucifer came to Earth and established a series of mystery schools designed to train souls in suppressing and controlling the emotional body. The plan backfired, because as the students learned to suppress their emotions, their souls became more and more fragmented until their vibration dropped below fourth density into third density. Suppressing any part of the self results in a loss of power and awareness. The shaming of emotion in men, the Victorian suppression of sexual desire and the making of feelings wrong all had their origins in Lucifer's philosophy. Archangel Michael, seeing what was happening on Earth, found that he could sit by no longer simply watching, and so he headed a group of ascended beings who voluntarily dropped their vibration and came to Earth, establishing another mystery school designed to raise the vibrations of souls back into the light. Once Michael and his group arrived on Earth, the vibrations were so dense that he and his band of celestial helpers became caught in the game of duality and started seeing the negatively oriented factions as evil forces to be overcome. Thus these archangels reinforce the concept of light versus dark on your world. Michael took the side of the light and many members of the councils of Rigel, as well as most of the Dracos, took the polarity of the dark. Meanwhile, Lucifer and his group maintained their cool, calm aloofness, becoming armchair strategists, watching with interest the battles taking shape. He became so fascinated with this drama of duality that he began building up both sides, through training the light and dark forces to fight each other in the interests of seeing who would be supreme victors. The missing ingredient in all of this was compassion. Lucifer taught the soldiers on the battlefield to suppress their emotions and become hardened to misery and suffering. Archangel Michael taught the soldiers to be passionate and forceful in overcoming the dark forces. When Lucifer saw what Michael was doing, he turned his attention from the Orions and waged war on Michael's forces, and a great battle ensued in the astral and etheric planes above Earth. This became known as the War in the Heavens. Michael's forces were passionate about becoming victors over darkness. Lucifer's forces were cool, calm, and intellectual and waged their wars through cunning strategy. The third force in all this, The negatively polarized Orions and Draconians proliferated as their primary foes were now at war with each other. The war in the heavens lasted about 1,000 years, taking place in roughly 500,000 BC. During the period from 1 million BC until 500,000 BC, the population of Earth grew from about 200 million to almost a billion people. Because the wars were largely off-planet and did not significantly impact the surface of the Earth or the subterranean cultures, the population did not drop that much during the Luciferian Rebellion. Most of the surface fighting was regional and involved conventional weapons. After about 1,000 years of fighting, the truce was declared and Lucifer and his group agreed not to promote overt aggression against anyone in the Earth system. Michael realized the futility of fighting the darkness, and also the futility of trying to overcome the suppression of emotional energy by force, and withdrew back into the celestial realms to integrate the lessons learned. Between 500,000 BC and 200,000 BC, life gradually evolved on Earth and a few souls recaptured their fourth density awareness and began learning how to live cooperatively. During this same period, many more souls came from all over the galaxy, and Earth truly became a melting pot. However, the biggest groups were still the Orions from Betelgeuse and Rigel. During the Luciferian Rebellion, the councils of Betelgeuse sided with Michael and the light forces while the councils of Rigel sided with the dark forces. Although there was very little overt hostility during the transition time following the rebellion, both the Orion groups generally confined their breeding to their respective polarities, thereby retaining their DNA structure. The Betelgeuse factions remained more peaceful while the Rigel factions continued to be domineering and aggressive. The pinnacle of population during these times reached almost 1.5 billion, just before the grand cycle around 200,000 BC. The first period of Lemuria started about 200,000 BC, after one of the grand cycles of 25,920 years had completed. This particular shift wiped out about half of Earth's population through massive earthquakes. The M shift caused certain lands to break up and move apart, and one land mass became particularly fertile ground for the development of a rather benign civilization. Souls who were attracted to this land mass were generally peaceful people, some originating in the Pleiadian sector and some from Sirius and Orion. This continent became roughly the size of Australia and was located almost on the same longitude, but a bit further north. What most historians do not realize is that civilization continued on the other continents during the first period of Lemuria, even though the vibration of the other continents was not as refined as it was on Lemuria. This first Lemurian civilization was later called the Land of Mu. It consisted of nearly 500 million souls at its pinnacle. About 3 grand cycles later, the M fluctuations were such that another catastrophe ensued and all the land masses except Lemuria became flooded. Most of the souls who perished in the surrounding continents reincarnated on Lemuria, and the population of Lemuria began to skyrocket. This became the second Lemurian period. This period was roughly from about 122,000 BC until about 100,000 BC. At the height of this second Lemurian civilization, the population again reached almost 1 billion people. These souls were not technologically oriented, but were tribal in nature, enjoying music and rhythm, and living in large cities along the coasts. Around 100,000 BC, the comet Anahuac made a particularly close approach to Earth, and the tail brushed the atmosphere, causing dramatic cooling. The Lemurian people were used to the warm, tropical climate and all of a sudden the temperature dropped 50 degrees F in literally hours, freezing most of them. Those who knew what was coming fled to the sea. Many walked into the sea and drowned. A few tried to build undersea cities, but were largely unsuccessful. There are many legends of the sea that originated during this period. The Lemurian land mass eventually sank beneath the sea, due to storms that followed the passage of the comet. There were only a handful of survivors and they migrated to what is now South America and Australia, and later Hawaii and the Philippines. What has not been revealed before, and what has been heavily suppressed on Earth, is that the Alpha Draconians were behind the unusually close passage of the comet. Through a series of nuclear explosions in space, they deliberately forced the trajectory of the comet closer to Earth in order to destroy the civilizations there. The plan was to wipe out the existing life on Earth and then land and claim the Earth for themselves. They were partially successful in this regard, but landing in their native bodies on Earth was a whole lot harder than incarnating into millions of already existing bodies. Suffice to say that they had a hard time surviving in their reptilian bodies, due to the unfavorable gravity and mixture of gases in the atmosphere. Their native bodies mutated and grew in size as they adapted, although their overall numbers remained small. This was the main period that gave rise to the legends of dragons roaming the earth. The Draconians, not to be defeated that easily, spent long years in laboratories aboard their spacecraft splicing and mutating various DNA samples until they came up with a human Draco hybrid. The secret involved injecting reptilian DNA into the cerebellum section of the brain where it quickly mutated the entire system. This part of the human is today still called the reptilian brain. While the characteristics of this part involve aggressive and competitive behavior and the fight-or-flight syndrome designed to protect the organism, these characteristics, when combined with Orion DNA, became especially potent and dominated the entire organism. Today, about 80% of the DNA in humans is Orion in origin, or maybe we should say, Orion Draco hybrid. What is commonly thought to be human nature is the result of this DNA manipulation by the Draconians and subsequent incarnation by the Orions. As stated in this channel's earlier works, our original DNA blueprint that we were so proud of was reduced to less than 20% of the overall makeup of human beings. Due to the low survival rate of the Draconians after the destruction of Lemuria, the percentage of humans with true reptilian DNA on Earth has remained rather low. Most of the settling of Earth after 100,000 BC and before Atlantis was done by the councils of Rigel and councils of Betelgeuse from Orion. Note: long after the wars in the Orion sector came to an end over 100,000 years ago, many of the factions that migrated to Earth continue to stay locked in battle mentality to the present day. As you can see by looking around, this trait ranges from civilized militarism and fervent patriotism to overt hostility and barbaric customs.